touchdown. It's through 50. He's got the speed. Touchdown.
Welcome into the latest episode of Mac and Mose. Andy McNamara, joined by the editor-in-chief of GoDucks.com, Rob Mosley. We are here to preview the Oregon Ducks and the Georgia State Panthers. Game number 3 for Oregon on the season. Their final non-conference game of the regular season. And good for this. It's got to feel good for this squad to be back at home. A disappointing loss at Michigan State a week ago, a game that I think everyone in the program felt that was a winnable game, and it kind of got away from them. And now a chance to go up against really themselves and the Georgia State Panthers here at Autzen Stadium.
Yeah, this is an important kind of bridge game between the high-profile matchup against Michigan State that had the nation's attention. You got the start of conference play coming up next week. So this is a game where there were some good things, there were some positives to build on in the fourth quarter against Michigan State. But you really got to make an effort to carry those forward through this week into conference play and not let that stuff lag. The defense was feeling good about itself after those late 3-and-outs against Michigan State. You want to be feeling that good about yourselves going against Utah in a couple weeks too, so you can't let that slip this week going against a Georgia State team that is a young program that doesn't have a lot of tradition, that's had some losses the last couple years, and everybody's going to be expecting Oregon to win this 200-0. And the Ducks need to do their part to kind of take care of business this week and maintain some momentum.
We'll give you a little bit of information on Georgia State because I think for a lot of fans it's a program that they don't know anything about. They are in the Sun Belt Conference. They are an FBS level team. The Ducks opened the season with Eastern Washington, sort of more of a known commodity here in the Pacific Northwest because they're just up, they're in the state of Washington, a few hours away. They've had success. They beat Oregon State a couple of years ago. So people in this area anyway know who Eastern Washington is. However, they are at a level lower than Georgia State in terms of football. They're FCS. Georgia State is FBS. They're coming off their first conference win ever. And their first game of the season was a loss at home, but also a close game. So this is a team that's improving a little bit. They've got some experience as well coming into this program after UAB disbanded their football program, which turned out to be temporary. But
right.
That definitely probably strengthens their roster for this game.
This is just a young program. It's only been established in the last half dozen years. So they've got 6 UAB transfers, which provides a little bit of a veteran presence on a program that staff on down is kind of lacking in a lot of experience together. Their head coach has been an assistant at Stanford, at Washington, so he's got some experience in this conference. Is going to know Oregon a little bit from that experience. But again, a game Oregon's going to be expected to take care of business. This is going to be about the Ducks, I think, as you mentioned. Like Eastern Washington, these guys are probably going to try to throw the ball quite a bit, get it out quick, avoid the pass rush, try to pressure Oregon's secondary, put guys in man-to-man situations and throw underneath them and kind of try to dink and dunk it down the field. So, an area where we saw the Ducks struggle a little bit in the opener, so it'll be a chance to see if there's been some growth since then in terms of pass coverage and pressuring a quarterback that wants to get rid of it quick.
They lost to Charlotte to open the season. They won at New Mexico State last week. As you mentioned, over 300 yards passing average per game for this team. They don't run it a ton. They're definitely more of a pass-oriented attack, but they've got some speed on the outside. It's it'll be one of those games where Oregon, I think, they're going to have to lock in and focus from the get-go regardless. It's kind of a strange start. It's 11 a.m. Did it a couple years ago against Wyoming, but I know that the coaching staff is going to preach, hey, we practice in the morning every day. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
It is going to be a little bit different, though, and I think, there is a challenge there to be awake and be alert and be ready to go and play football that early in the morning.
And again, this is kind of a bridge game. I think we saw what happened to Auburn last week. Auburn opens with, I think it was Louisville, then they went into SEC play, and in the middle they had, was it Jacksonville State?
Yeah.
Last week and nearly lost, had to go to overtime to win that game. So you see an example from elsewhere in the country where kind of this bridge game lurked in between high-profile matchups, and those can be dangerous. They can be a challenge mentally, and the early start compounds that. But again, Ducks have usually been practicing 10:30, so they'll actually be getting going a little bit later than they have been for practices. So certainly not an excuse they'll be able to fall back on.
And also, they're coming off a loss against Michigan State, and that adds some urgency to whoever the opponent is
Certainly.
this week. So I think this team is very anxious. It might even be a situation where they're glad it's at 11, because the sooner the better to get back out there and try to play Oregon football. Oregon is 7-0, coming off a loss since the start of the 2011 season. They're winning by an average of 48-25 in those games. So they've done a really good job recently, anyway, of being able to bounce back. They haven't lost that many games, but when they have, they've been able to refocus quickly. Let's talk a little bit about the Ducks now. Everybody knows the situation with Vernon Adams at the game last week. It was revealed that he had an injured finger. He wore gloves for the game. I have to think it had something to do with the overthrow of Byron Marshall down the stretch. It's on his throwing hand, and don't even get me started on that. I don't know how he can even do it.
Yeah,
it was
tough
impressive,
guy.
very tough guy. But Mark Helfrich has said this week, we'll see about the quarterback situation. I think both of us expected to see multiple quarterbacks in the opener against Eastern Washington. That never really happened.
Yeah.
Jeff Locke came in at the end of that game to hand off. But maybe this is the game where we get to see more than just one quarterback throw the football for Oregon.
Yeah, I don't care who takes the first snap. I'll be shocked if Jeff Locke doesn't end up taking the most snaps among the Oregon quarterbacks, both because of the situation that Vernon's dealing with, but also just you want your backups to be ready to play meaningful situations. And Jeff just hasn't had a situation yet where he can really, he's been thrust into, like in the national championship game, kind of thrust out there spur of the moment when he least expected it. It's just like, hey, hand off a couple times so we can get Marcus back out there. But to really run the offense, you got to find out what you have on your hands in Jeff Locke. Last week would have been a really tough situation for him to make his first career start. This week, again, regardless of who starts, it's a chance at home to get him in there, hopefully early, and see what he can do running the offense when there's still some the game sort of on the line, quote unquote, to whatever extent that might be the case. And let's find out once and for all. I think everybody's eager to see, who is this kid and what kind of commodity can he be. Again, regardless of Vernon Adams' status, let's find that out at some point.
Also for Oregon, coming back last week, Devin Allen and Charles Nelson made their season debuts after missing the opener. Devin coming back from just an amazingly quick and productive rehab over the offseason. He injured himself on the opening kickoff of the Rose Bowl and was back out there. We talked to him this week. I think he's got that confidence back. Physically he feels good, but now mentally I think he's ready to turn it loose. So this is a game also. We saw it against Eastern Washington where Oregon was able to really go through the depth chart, get some carries and touches for guys like Tony Brooks-James and Taj Griffin. Kenai Benoit saw a lot of action. Last week against Michigan State, it was a lot more of the ones and not as many of the twos. Maybe this can be a game where the Ducks, especially going into conference play, can not just with the quarterback situation, but really start to see what they have at other positions as well.
Yeah, by the same token, regardless of who starts, I wouldn't expect Vernon Adams to have the most pass attempts against Georgia State, and I certainly wouldn't expect Royce Freeman to have the most rushes against Georgia State. I think particularly after all the heavy load he carried last week, give Tony Brooks-James some carries, give Kenai Benoit some carries. Taj Griffin, let's get some meaningful action for Taj Griffin. We got thrust in there late in the Eastern Washington game, had that big explosive carry, but also a couple of runs for loss, so it was kind of a good news, bad news appearance for him. I don't believe he played against Michigan State. So now is a chance for him, too, to get some meaningful snaps because, he's a different kind of athlete than the other guys at the running back position. Just his change of direction is different than any of those other guys have. That can be an asset going forward this season. But he's got to prove it. He's got to show that. And here's a chance to maybe get him some reps and see what Taj Griffin can do.
Defensively, the Ducks can try to build off the end of that Michigan State game where they got a couple of huge stops. There were some explosion plays for the Spartans, and that is something that is of concern. But the way that Oregon finished that game, the way that they really handed the ball back over to the offense and gave them an opportunity to win the game has to be encouraging. The young defensive secondary continues to get experience. This is another game, especially going into Utah, where they can get lots of reps, and I think that you hope that they can get some real meaningful experience out of a game like this.
Coming off the Taj Griffin talk on offense, defense, a couple other freshmen I think to watch. If all goes well and kind of as expected, hopefully DeForest Buckner and Alex Balducci and some of those guys won't have to play a ton. What you'd like to see them do is start out with a couple of stops early on, maintain that momentum from the Michigan State game, and then be able to get out of there because the game's in hand. And then a guy like Canton Kamatule, who kind of trial by fire at Michigan State, came in, I think he played one series, and it was just bang, 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 3 rushing plays right down Oregon's throat for the eventual game-winning touchdown for Michigan State. Get him in there, let him get comfortable, on a different stage, not quite that level of pressure, and really get his feet under him and play a bunch of snaps. Ugo Amade, another guy, a freshman on the back end who is going to need to play a lot of football for this team. Let him really play a lot of snaps and see what he can do. This is a passing offense that's going to test those defensive backs. You're going to see some of those soon again in Washington State, Cal coming up on the schedule. So, Ugo's going to need to play a lot. Let's see what he's got.
Another newcomer that could get some more action as well, Paris Bostic, who's making the transition from linebacker to safety. And this is not a slight against Tyree Robinson or Reggie Daniels, but to have a safety with the size of Bostic that can lay the wood a little bit and give them more of a physical presence in the middle of the field, hopefully it's a chance for him to see some action as well.
We've been talking who's the next Eric Dargan?
Yeah.
And that's an imperfect thing. You want to do that every year. A guy leaves, well, who's the perfect analog for that guy that's going to fill that role? Where every team's different, every guy's different. But in terms of a guy that's just a ball hawk, seems to have a knack for the ball, and then is a big safety who can lay the wood. Paris Bostic is that guy. And so I'm excited to see. I wouldn't expect him to come out of this game with 10 tackles and 2 interceptions, but hopefully he's able to get a bunch of playing time and start working toward being a guy who can produce at that level later in the season.
So the 1-1 Ducks now outside the top 10 and the top 25 take on the 1-1 Georgia State Panthers. Panthers are 1-0 in their conference. Final non-conference regular season game for Oregon this season, and then it's on to Pac-12 play in what very well could be a top 25 matchup at Autzen Stadium. No kickoff time as of our taping. We should know by Monday at the absolute latest. The networks exercise their 6-day window, which they get a couple of each year. There's 3 really good Pac-12 games on September 26th, and that is the reason why we've had this delay in kickoff time. We do know that it will be no earlier than 5 o'clock. The slots are 5, 5:30, and 7:30 are the 3 broadcast times that are available for Oregon and Utah at Autzen Stadium. We will be back to wrap it up early next week. In the meantime, if you have questions for us, feel free to hit us up on Twitter. I am at McNamara UO. He is at Duck Football. Until next time, we'll see.
Gets the corner into the end zone for the touchdown. It's through 50. He's got the speed. Touchdown.